Hello, dear Dhamma friends. I'm going to give you an introduction about Venerable Sir. Venerable Kirinde Chandananda Thero is a famous Dhamma master who has been teaching Buddhism in the West for many years now. He graduated from Peradeniya University in Sri Lanka with a special honors degree. Also, he was also a former lecturer in Buddhist studies in the same university. Currently, Venerable Chandananda Thero is a resident monk at the Los Angeles Buddhist Vihara, Pasadena, and teaches Buddhism and meditation. Also, Thero presents retreats and talks around the United States of America and Canada. Please welcome Venerable Chandananda Thero. Sadhu.
Shall we begin with the recitation of Namo Tassa by paying our homage to the world teacher, the Lord Buddha. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Homage to the Exalted One, the Worthy One, the Perfectly Enlightened One. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Most Venerable Kurundankulame Shanta Sobhana Thera and dear Dhamma friends, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Most Venerable Kurundankulame Shanta Sobhana Thera for having me invited here tonight to share some thoughts of Dhamma with you. Among the things that can be shared, Dhamma is the most precious thing, but worth sharing. It's an incomparable gift we are blessed with, the Dhamma. So, by the way, did you happen to read the theme of the lecture tonight? How it goes? Does anyone happen to read it? Okay, let me tell you the theme. I wish you knew it before. Meditation as a cognitive therapy. Is anyone interested in that? Okay. So then is a whole lot of things to discuss. Meditation as a cognitive therapy. So all these three words might give a kind of might appear to be problematic and questionable. One might be wondering, why cognitive therapy? What this therapy is? Why particularly the therapy? And what is the distinction of cognitive therapy? And also on the other hand, what it has to do with Buddhist meditation. So don't worry, in the course of the lecture, hopefully you might get some answers to those wandering thoughts. Meditation as a cognitive therapy. So I chose this theme because today there is a great tendency towards the Buddhist mental culture we call meditation. Everyone is interested in practicing meditation, but hardly we look into the nature of meditation, especially to understand or to distinguish Buddhist meditation from that of other types of meditations. Because meditation, the word meditation is an inclusive term. There is no the meditation. So is other things too. Like there is no the therapy. There can be many kinds of therapies. So, however, there are a lot of things that we should know before we sit for the meditation. That is why in Buddhism, the Buddha doesn't teach meditation very first. Rather, it comes towards the end of the path that we are supposed to practice. As you sometimes already know, that the path that we practice as Buddhists consists of 8 factors, 8 things, 8 steps, starting from right view. So if you carefully look into all these 8 steps, you can realize that we come across meditation mostly in last 3 steps, not in a right view, not even in right thoughts or right intention. Meditation mostly has to do with right effort or right mindfulness and right concentration. Then why these right view, right thoughts, right intentions and all that? That is because Buddha also was of a view that there should be a cognitive approach to our practice. That's why the path starts from right understanding. So, just to clarify the theme first, so that we can have a better understanding in the course of lecture. Let me share something about the distinction of cognitive therapy. Have you ever heard this this kind of therapy, cognitive? And are you comfortable in using the word cognitive? What does it refer to? Any idea? Yeah, you also can join with me. Thinking, yes, thinking. And yeah, it has to do with our thinking process, thinking activity, the activity of thinking. So actually, I hardly use secondary sources and any source other than Buddhist sources when I give Dhamma talk. But today I brought a reference book to show you or to give you a kind of idea about this topic and to introduce you to this new sort of field that cognitive therapy. Actually, I read this book written by Aaron T. Beck. This is called Cognitive Therapy and Emotional Disorders, long time back. Then I felt like, okay, there is something that I can really integrate into Buddhism, or in other words, I can look at Buddhism from this perspective too, the Buddhist practice, from the perspective of cognitive therapy. But we have to be very careful that the cognitive therapy admitted in this kind of subject discipline differs diametrically from that of Buddhist cognitive therapy. But still, I want you to look into the concept. One of the reasons why I chose this theme, cognitive therapy, just to distinguish cognitive therapy from that of other kinds of therapies. Basically, this book discusses three kinds of therapies: therapy, behavioral therapy, and the therapy based on psychoanalysis. Let's try to get a kind of understanding about this concept first, then we can elaborate on it from the perspective of Buddhist cognitive therapy. Let me read just few paragraphs so that we can distinguish cognitive therapy from that of other kinds of therapy. So this writer says that classical psychoanalysis regards conscious thoughts as disguised representation of unconscious conflicts that are presumably causing the problem. The patient's own explanations are regarded as spurious rationalization, his coping mechanism as defenses. Consequently, his conscious ideas, his reasoning and judgments, his practical solutions to problems are not taken at face value. They are treated as stepping stone to deeper concealed components of the mind. That is the story of the therapy based on psychoanalysis. So, in other words, according to that theory, our emotional world is explained in terms of deeply rooted sort of psychology of our life. Then coming to the behavioral therapy. Behavior therapists similarly have tended to downgrade the importance of thinking, but for completely different reasons, in their zeal to emulate the precision and theoretical illusions of the physical science. The original behaviorists rejected data and concepts derived from man's reflections on his conscious experience. Hence, thoughts, feelings, and ideas, which by definition are accessible only to the person experiencing them, were not considered valid data. The patient's private world was not regarded as a usual area of inquiry. This is the nature and certain problems we identify in behavioral therapy. And then about the cognitive therapy. Let me read one passage from that concept too. Psychological problems are not necessarily the product of mysterious, impenetrable forces, but mere results from commonplace processes, such as faulty learning, making incorrect inferences on the basis of inadequate or incorrect information, and not distinguishing adequately between imagination and reality. Moreover, thinking can be unrealistic because it is derived from erroneous premises. Behavior can be self-defeating because it is based on unreasonable attitudes. Thus, psychological problems can be mastered by sharpening discriminations, correcting misconceptions, and learning more adaptive attitudes. Since in introspection, insight, reality testing, and learning are basically cognitive processes, this approach to the neurosis has been labeled cognitive therapy. So, I know that this is kind of dry information, but let us try to make sense out of it. In our life, why we need therapy? There is a definite answer to that question. We don't need therapy for its own sake, do we? Do we need medicine if we don't have illnesses? No. We need therapy because there are certain wounds to be healed. Not necessarily the bodily wounds. We have mental, psychological wounds. There are illnesses to be cured. There is suffering to be overcome. Therefore, we need therapy. So, in other words, throughout our life, what we have been doing so far is nothing but looking after kind of therapy or relief, cure, solutions for our problems. This was the field of inquiry of the great prince Siddhartha 2600 years ago. Being a royal prince, he grew up amidst of luxury, but at the same time he was so contemplative about what is happening within us, what is happening around us. So then he soon realized that there is a lot of sufferings, problems that we are confronting with. Aging, diseases, illnesses, whole lot of problems. And people throughout their life, they do something, whatever their mind says, they want to test it and do something about it, but in the end, all our attempts in vain. We cannot find out, we haven't been able to find out an everlasting solution, satisfactory answer to all our problems. So then the Buddha realized that there is a definite way. We have to find the root cause. You know, even though you have no idea about this so-called behavioral therapy, knowingly or unknowingly, we do that. According to behavioral therapists, all our emotional problems because of certain stimuli, sense stimuli. To rectify the problems here, we need to condition the environment, condition the stimuli. Don't we do that? Indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly, we do that. To keep us peace, calm, and maintain peace of mind, which we tend to change our external circumstances, things, our environment. We do that. There is what lies behind our attitude. We believe that by changing certain things out there, we can change our mind. That's what we do. And on the other hand, sometimes you haven't identified that, recognized that you do a therapy based on psychoanalysis. But when it comes to our real life, we do that. That's why all of a sudden we want to go to a forest monastery or meditation retreats and just to calm our mind, and we think that there is something hidden, and once we figure it out and rectify it, then we can find peace. That's what we do, right? Most of the time, our life is fluctuating between these two, behavioral side and the psychoanalytical side. So this is where I want to really sort of contextualize the importance and the relevance of cognitive therapy in terms of the Buddhist teachings. So, for instance, now let me share a story. There was a king a long time ago. He had a kind of very strange idea, kind of desire. He wanted to walk on the ground, lie in a kind of soft carpet and rug like this, all over the place wherever he go. And then the ministers said that, Your Majesty, country can't afford to that. No one can afford to that. I mean, it is impossible to put a soft carpet all over the ground, everywhere you go. But we have a solution for that. We can make a pair of shoes out of that same material. Then you can wear it. Then no matter where you are, you go, you will feel the same comfort. See, this is the attitude most of the time we have. See, once you wear shoes of that material, you will feel the same comfort. The same way, once you establish peace within, then you are going to experience the bliss of peace without everywhere. But the problem is that we all are waiting until everything is fixed um, and corrected, and so we are waiting that there will be a time where we can really be happy once we accomplish these things, and once our the education of our kids is completed, and once we sometimes get a good job, and while you are doing job you still have dreams, once I get retirement and I can live a comfortable life and so forth. So our life is fluctuating between these two extremes. And on the other hand, we have sort of we believe in kind of mysterious things. We think that there is a kind of unseen power behind all these circumstances, and once we figure it out, and then maybe we can find peace. Still not sure. We think that this unhappiness sort of things coming from somewhere inside in our mind within, but we are not aware of that, and we think that we are not responsible for that. This is also an extreme. So then we are not certain about the path to peace. This is where we need the assistance of this kind of cognitive therapy, because for our unhappiness, happiness, we are responsible. This is all about our thinking, how we react, how we think, that matters. So then, according to the Buddha, there is a cognitive error in our thinking. First we have to identify it and rectify that. What is this cognitive error that has to be fixed? Only by rectifying that cognitive error, we can find everlasting peace, enduring peace. Until then, only the temporary kind of satisfaction and sort of feeling of relief. The entire Buddhism is headed towards attaining that by correcting this erroneous thinking. Then how we can identify that? Where this cognitive error comes in our perception. According to the Buddha, the way we perceive things is incorrect. No matter how wisely we try to perceive things, cognize things, with all our academic qualifications and exposure to spirituality, still we are not progressing until we fix the problem here. This error in perception is a serious problem, very serious. Then how we can figure it out? And do you believe that there is that kind of cognitive error in our thinking? So for instance, I can show you that whether you have that cognitive error or not. Now everyone came here by using your car. After coming here, you just park your car by the side of the road and came here, right? So everyone remembers where you parked your car? You remember, right? Now, don't you believe that the car you parked out there exists, isn't it? That's there, even though we are here. So, if you are of that belief, remember that you have that cognitive error. If as long as you believe that the home, the residence you just left from exists, even in your absence, that means you have that cognitive error. We all think this way, right? So we believe that we are of the view that the things we experience exist. When we say experience, when the Buddha says experience, it refers to all our sixfold experiences. Because we experience the world through these six senses. In essence, we are what we sense. We are what we experience. One time, a monk came to the Buddha and asked the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, you have been giving many different discourses to different walks of lives, all different groups of people. And I have a question. Like, you have been talking about different things and about the existence and the karma, rebirth, and all that. But I have a curiosity to know what is everything. Is it possible for me to learn everything from the Buddha?" Then the Buddha said, "Of course, you can learn everything." Then he was so interested in knowing everything. Then the Buddha said, "Monk, everything is eyes, visual forms, ear, sound, nose, smell, tongue, taste, body, tactile sensation, mind and thoughts. These 12 things I would call everything," the Buddha said. If one were to imagine anything beyond these 12, he cannot make sense out of it. Everything in the world can be confined to these 12. can you think of anything beyond these 12? At least imagine. So, in other words, to make it easier for you to comprehend, now we say that this is our life, right? And we live, and we have been living, and we are going to live on this planet, and so forth. What we actually do in terms of living, we do only 6 things. We see things through the eyes, experience the world through the eyes. We experience the world through the ears. We experience the world through the nose, tongue, body, and mind. In other words, what we do is nothing but these 6 small things. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. Right? Now we say sometimes, whenever we are very busy, and sometimes I heard people complaining that no one is busy. I mean, everyone is doing the same thing. If one is doing anything other than these 6 things, I would accept that, okay, he is busy because he is doing something addition to these 6 whole things. But we all are doing almost the same thing. So no one is busy. We all are doing the same thing. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. But the Buddha says that we do not experience things as they really come into being, as they really are. In seeing, for instance, we think that we see what is existing, right? Or in other words, what is existing is seen by us. This is what we believe, right? When it comes to the teachings of the Buddha, this is a serious error. That way we can never ever come to the understanding of dependent origination. No middle path is possible. Now you should be familiar, must be familiar with these words and concepts like 5 aggregates, like matter, sensation, perception, formations, and consciousness, all that, right? So actually they are irrelevant, not relevant. As long as we believe that we see what is existing, 5 things are not relevant. Just matter is enough. But the Buddha says that matter is only one of the components of our experience. There are 4 more components. But we are aware of only one thing, matter. But according to the Buddha, matter cannot cognize matter itself. Because the content of I is matter. When the Buddha says matter, he refers to solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion. These 4 essentials, 4 elements. They cannot be seen. They do not come within the sphere of touch or within the sphere of seeing or any other thing. So matter is only one of the components. There are 4 things: sensation, perception, formations, and consciousness. If you understand the function of all these five things, then only you can rectify that the cognitive error in your mind. Until then, we all suffer. As long as we believe that things exist and the existing things are seen by us, we can tell but cling to things. You know, clinging leads to becoming. Becoming leads to rebirth. Or once we are reborn, we have to experience the all mass of suffering, isn't it? So this is where the Buddha talks about the dependent origination. Dependent origination as opposed to independent origination. We are of independent origination. I mean, of the view that independent, we believe in independent sort of origination. As long as we say that we see what is existing, we don't have to refer to it dependent origination, because we believe that things exist on its own. But according to the Buddha, nothing exists on its own. Things exist dependent upon the causes and conditions. You know, but it is very difficult for us to believe this, but actually this is the case in our life. For instance, now, for you to understand the nature of a dependent origination, let me give you an example. Suppose this, we have a friend here, dog. What is his or her name? Does it have some name? What is the name of? Merle. Okay. Suppose now this dog goes to a mirror. So then how he react to the mirror? Yeah. Selang karena puluhan. Saburan na pulang. He might he might respond in two ways. He might either bark at the reflection seen in the mirror, or he might be even angry with what he is seeing right in the mirror. Now, why is that? Why we people, human beings, why we do not do that? Why we don't get deceived by reflection? Why is that? Because compared to the dog, we have a kind of dependent origination idea about dependent origination. Kind of. Because we know that the reflection seen in the mirror is conditioned phenomena. There are necessary conditions for us to see the reflection. Mirror, the object, and the light. So, when these three conditions are present, then there is that reflection. The dog doesn't recognize that. He thinks as if there is a dog, another dog in the mirror, another animal. And see, in our case, we know that reflection is being formed by these necessary conditions. Mirror, the object, and the light. And then the Buddha said once that the world, for the most part, is fluctuating between two extreme notions: the notion of existence and the notion of non-existence. Then the Buddha said that by avoiding these two extreme notions, I teach the Dhamma following the middle path. Middle path, or the dependent origination, avoids these two notions: notion of existence, notion of non-existence. Because in that example, according to the Buddha, we cannot say dog exists in the mirror. If one were to say that, he is wrong. Because we cannot say that dog exists, because with the breakup of removal of any of the conditions, it ceases. Nor can we say that dog doesn't exist either, because when these necessary conditions are met, it is. So this is how the middle path avoids this notion of existence and the notion of non-existence. Actually, the things that we see, we perceive, we experience through all our 6 senses, almost the same thing, same principle, what we see in front of the mirror. But we think that, okay, reflection, okay, is a conditioned phenomenon, but everything else is not of that nature. So, see, as long as dog thinks that animal exists in the mirror, his mind is not at rest. He can go to the past and sort of imagine, develop that imagination based on what he saw, because he thinks that it is already always existing. So as long as we think that things are existing all the time, we suffer. I mean, suffering can come to us anytime. In order to overcome suffering, all sort of mental illnesses, we have to rectify this cognitive error. So this is what I wanted to share with you in terms of this cognitive therapy, just to identify this cognitive error and to treat it with the doctrine of, by understanding the doctrine of dependent origination. So if you have any further clarifications, I would like to hear from you. Any questions, comments?
He's going to use what we have for practical, for accommodating us, and then understand that it's temporary, the house is temporary, and everything is just for our use.
Yeah. Yeah. When this teaching, when it applying to our day-to-day life, what kind of attitude we are supposed to have, like, yeah. I mean, first of all, we had to understand this, cognitively, and intellectual. Then Buddha said that this intellectual understanding alone doesn't keep you practicing on the path. Then that's why these 8 items comes in, right? To support this understanding. First of all, we are supposed to acquire this intellectual understanding. That's why Sammaditthi comes first. Sammaditthi is to understand this error. This is what we understand in terms of Four Noble Truths. That there is suffering, and the cause of suffering, what is the cause of suffering? Craving, right? Tanha. Then when we further question why tanha, why we crave for things, tanha is because of sensation, right? Then going back, and we then come across that bhava, jati. When it comes to bhava, becoming, then we have to understand that this bhava, when it comes to bhava or becoming, there are 2 kinds of becoming: psychological becoming and conventional becoming. The psychological becoming means always we have that mentality that things exist. Whatever we experienced before and what we are experiencing right now exists. That notion of existence is called bhava, karma bhava, karmic bhava, psychological bhava. As long as we maintain that mentality, no doubt we are subject to birth. Then when we are born, we have to experience, accept all of the other suffering. Because, no one came to this world with the desire to maintain this body. Basically, our tanha is towards what we receive through these 6 senses. We have tanha for what we see, visual form. We have tanha for sounds. We have tanha craving for taste, touch, and thoughts. Then we cannot have this without having a body. Then that mentality leads us to take up psychophysical organism we call Namarupa. Then we are born and develop this Namarupa, and the 5 senses is formed, and again we receive these things. Still the same thing, same ignorance is going on. So firstly we had to understand this intellectually, then we had to support that understanding with right effort, right concentration, right action, livelihood. We had to support it. And then comes meditation, samatha meditation and with vipassana meditation. Samatha meditation is because that understanding doesn't retain in our mind, because mind is not ready to see it for ourselves. Still we believe because Buddha says that. But there comes a day where we can know for ourselves. That is why meditation, we need meditation. By using meditations, we can calm our mind, and especially we can get rid of 5 hindrances like sensuous desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worries. Once we overcome all these things, then mind is calm. When the mind is calm, then we can see that there is 2 parts in the practice, in knowledge, 2 kinds of knowledge. Janato, passato. Buddha explicitly, clearly mentioned that Janato ahang bhikka ve passato asavanang kayang vadami no ajanato no apassato. Cankers or the immoral tendencies or impurities or what you call the all sort of tanha can be overcome by the person who knows and who sees. Janato and passato. Just knowing is not enough. There comes a day where we can see that. For us to see that, then we need to meditate. Once we meditate, then we overcome 5 hindrances, then we know it for ourselves. Attanameva janeyati. We know it for ourselves. So we have to be very patient in this practice. That's where this saddha comes in. Otherwise, saddha has no special place. But when it comes to our practice, we have to maintain this saddha or faith. First, we have to believe in, not just believe in, intellectually, we have to grasp the message, and then we have to practice the path accordingly. So, this doesn't mean that, okay, things are impermanent, we have to leave everything and renounce everything. Because even that mentality is not healthy. Because if you think that nothing is there, is again extreme. If you think there is things are there, is another extreme. Buddha clearly says that we have to avoid these two notions. There are two extreme notions. We cannot say dog exists in the mirror. Nor can we say dog doesn't exist in the mirror. How we can say that? We have to say that it exists as long as condition exists. When we see something, eye is a necessary condition. Form is a necessary condition. Eye consciousness is a necessary condition. But if we think that things exist, what we saw exists, it is as if we believe in that seeing is possible without having eyes, without having eye consciousness. Isn't it a serious cognitive error? It is. This is what we have to overcome. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
So, you just mentioned how to say that. As long as the conditions exist, then the dog exists. How do you apply that thinking?
Yeah. Okay. Let's say that, suppose that we have a kind of extreme sort of obsessive desire towards a taste. Say for instance, we like the mango taste very much. I take this example because I like mango. Let's say a chocolate. Now, why we crave for mango? Because we think sort of that taste intrinsically exists in mango itself. But mango alone cannot produce that taste. How about tongue consciousness? How about the tongue? Now, for instance, when you sleep, you don't hear all the sounds making out there, right? You don't hear as much as you do hear when you are awake. Why we don't okay, first of all, why we don't see things through these eyes when we are sleeping? when we are asleep? Because we have closed our eyes. Then why we don't hear things? Do we close our ears too? Ears are open, but still we don't hear everything. Why? Ear is only one of the necessary condition, not the sufficient condition. Ear consciousness should be there. We don't hear because there is no, by that time, ear consciousness. Because of the absence of ear consciousness. So these three things should be there to see and to experience anything. Sense stimulus, and the sense consciousness. So now, once we understand this, then we can really apply to our day-to-day life, because this is what we do. We are just seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. Then we don't attribute it to any of those single entity. Like we don't attribute the taste of the mango to mango itself. Nor do we attribute it to the tongue. Nor do we attribute it to the tongue consciousness. Rather, we recognize that when these three things come together, it arises. Asmin sati idang hoti. When this is, that comes into being. Asmin asati idang nahoti. When this is not, that is not. It's like, take for instance the shadow. For us to see the shadow of a tree, let's figure out certain most necessary condition. Let's say we see the shadow of the orange tree. Now the ground is a necessary condition, tree is a necessary condition, and the light is a necessary condition. Then we see the shadow. Now, is shadow the tree? Is it the tree? Or is it the ground? Or is it the light? So, as we understand this Buddhist causality, we have to be really, careful. Because there are different kinds of causality, but the causality Buddha talks about is different. According to that causality, the causes do not, the result doesn't represent cause, but they are necessary conditions. The result, let's say, where was that shadow before we saw it? Before it happened, it occurred. Was it somewhere in the tree? No, it wasn't somewhere in the tree. Was it somewhere in the ground? No, it wasn't. Was it somewhere in the light? No. But when these three things come together, it comes into being, right? So this is, we call dependent origination. Origination of the shadow, but dependent origination, as opposed to independent origination. We had to say that it is of dependent origination because it doesn't exist on its own. It dependently arises. It depends, the existence of shadow depends upon other causes and conditions. Therefore, it doesn't have existence on its own. It is always because of this notion that we think that as long as we think that things exist on its own, so long we crave for things, because we think that exists. Taste exists somewhere. What we saw exists. Sound exists. Smell exists. That's why we crave for things. Once we understand this, at least to some extent, intellectually, then we can reduce unnecessary obsession, sort of desire, to a greater extent. But still, this intellectual understanding alone cannot make you see that. For that, you have to practice meditation and calm your mind. Once you experience the sort of mental what you call jhanas, then there comes a day where you see for yourself. So see, this is how we can apply this teaching into our day-to-day lives. Uh, I mean, this understanding, the Buddha calls this is like going against the current, against the flood. You know, so only after the enlightenment, Buddha, it occurred to the Buddha like, okay, I might end up being tired, and if I were to preach this doctrine, because the entire world is of different view. What the Buddha realized is completely different. It is easy for us to go with the flow, but it is extremely hard going against the current, against the flood. It is easy for us to think that things exist and what we see exists and everything exists. It is not difficult. But how about this teaching that things exist as long as conditions exist? It's going against the current. That is why this teaching is unique only to the Buddha, that can be understood by oneself only by the Buddha for the first time. And if one were to understand on his own that teaching, he is called Buddha. But when the Buddha teaches that doctrine, by following that doctrine, that teaching, then we can get there too. Then we are called Arahants. This is where the Arahants distinguish from the Buddha. So, this is why the Buddha says that the heart of the teachings of the Buddha is nothing but this doctrine of dependent origination. The essence is called dependent origination. Once we, this is what the Buddha says, that if one wants to see the Buddha, one has to see the Dhamma. If one wants to see the Dhamma, one has to see Paticca or dependent origination. This is where we understand the conditionality. So once we understand this conditionality, dependent origination, then path becomes clear to us. We know what to do then. Then comes meditation. When we come to meditation, we soon realize that we cannot do meditation all of a sudden. Then there are certain other things that we can prepare. We should prepare ourselves for the meditation. There comes the necessity of seal or virtues. First, we have to discipline ourselves. The example I just gave about the dog. Suppose that, we know that compared to our understanding, that dog is suffering from a serious ignorance, and he thinks that there is an animal in the mirror. Suppose that if you were to discipline and teach him the conditionality there, you had to teach the dog that, dog, what you see is not existing. It exists as long as condition exists, but dog cannot grasp it. That intellectual understanding doesn't retain in dog's case. If you were to discipline him, you had to follow this gradual path. First you had to discipline his words and deeds. And when he is disciplined in words and deeds, then you can teach some. Okay, you have to train your mind, calm your mind, calm down. Then maybe you can see for yourself, just as we do see. We see for ourselves. Do we need someone to tell us that, okay, the reflection that we see in the mirror doesn't exist? No, we know for ourselves, because we recognize the conditionality there in that phenomenon. Actually, for the Buddha and the Arahants, we are in the position of the dog. In front of the mirror, we are not deceived. But when it comes to our experience, we are deceived. Then Buddhas and Arahants who overcome this serious cognitive error, they feel so much compassion and sorry for us, because they know that as long as we are of this view, so long we are subject to suffering. So then they give us these Four Noble Truths. First we have to understand that there is a problem that is called truth, the truth of suffering. And we have to understand this is the cause of suffering. This is where we understand the conditionality, and this is how this problem can be overcome, cessation of suffering. And this is where this is how you can see for yourself the path. So then they teach us, first, this intellectual understanding doesn't retain in your mind because of the absence of your self-restraint. First, we are supposed to have self-restraint in terms of sila virtues, practice. We have to practice at least 5 precepts. Once we practice 5 precepts or 8 precepts, then it is very much helpful, very much conducive for us to experience the meditative absorptions. Then we calm our mind, practicing by undertaking certain meditation courses. Then we experience jhanas. Then we know what we hear from the Buddha. The Four Noble Truths. We see it for ourselves. Meditation, we do meditation not to understand the Four Noble Truths, but to see the Four Noble Truths. That's why before we sit for the meditation, we are supposed to acquire the knowledge in Four Noble Truths and the dependent origination. In other words, what has happened to us? What is happening to us? Always with that knowledge, we can proceed. So, I wish that by the power of the merits we accumulated this evening, may we be able to see that truth for ourselves as immediately as possible in this very life, and to shorten this samsaric journey and to attain the final bliss of liberation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you very much, Venerable Sir. And I think it is a very good enlightened Dhamma talk today. And we are fortunate to listen that. And I hope that our devotees learn something. And sometimes it helps us to little bit move forward, and sometimes it shakes us inside, because in day-to-day life we believe in things and we keep around our life following the whatever our habits. And sometimes when you listen to this kind of talks, it shakes inside us to think, and that also a gift for you, and to know there is something that the beyond that what you think. And sometimes when we do this kind of activities, some people come and say, I didn't get anything. And I say, that is the gift for us, because that is why we are here. Keep batteries and inviting more, and it is a gift for us to keep doing these kind of things. So somehow I hope that all of you learn something today. So that is the gift from us. So, and Venerable Sir, I am very grateful and thankful for you having in this evening here with this our devotees, and by the power of this all meritorious activities, may you be well, happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no problems come to you. May you also have patience, courage, understanding and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties in your life. And finally, may you attain supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very lifetime. Say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.